My name is Fred Harrell. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that I founded called Cultivate that does one-on-one coaching for pastors, spiritual direction, and church consulting. In a previous lifetime, I founded City Church San Francisco, and I'm on the board of SFIC. It's my privilege to be with you this morning. I thought I would begin with scripture reading from the prophet Isaiah from the 8th century, who spoke during the reigns of several kings. He called people to justice. He called people to faithfulness amid threats from empire. Sounds particularly timely. His message combined warnings of judgment and powerful visions of hope, including peace, restoration, and the coming of a suffering servant. His writings have deeply shaped both Jewish and Christian traditions. This is what the prophet said in Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 and 7. Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin. This is one of those passages, it seems to me, that gets right to the heart of what it means to be a human being and what it means to live faithfully. The prophet Isaiah does not just speak to just one tradition, but to a timeless truth shared across many. That true worship is not found only in ritual or word, but in action, in sheltering those, for example, without a home, in feeding those who are hungry, in showing up, in never turning away. Today, as we celebrate the success of the Interfaith Winter Shelter, we are honoring that shared truth. We are naming the divine presence that shows up in volunteers who are rolling out sleeping mats and hot meals served with dignity, and in the choice to see the humanity of our unhoused neighbors. And as we lift up also today the work of my dear friend Adrian Tirtanadi and Open Door Legal, I can't help but remember when Adrian first launched this vision. The church I pastored and founded, City Church San Francisco, was a proud supporter of Open Door Legal from the very beginning. And I'm grateful that they still are under the leadership of my successor, Emily McGinley. What began as a bold dream has now become a vital safety net for thousands, living out the dream and the vision of Isaiah. Free legal aid isn't just paperwork. It's protection from eviction. It's securing benefits wrongly denied. It's a mother able to keep her children. It's a door opened when every other one was closed. We are fortunate to have you with us today, Adrian. And I'll let Adrian say more about what he's doing, but I could be up here for another hour bragging on Open Door Legal. As the pastor of City Church for almost 30 years, we were able to support all sorts of ministries over that time frame. And I was just telling Adrian just a minute ago, I cannot imagine helping fund and support a ministry that has such measurable, empirical, observable, objective impact, dollar for dollar. I have never seen anything quite like it. And I am so grateful that you're going to get to hear from him today, to hear about this remarkable ministry and what it means to give free legal aid to those in our community who have the laws to support them but have no access to them. Shelter and justice, bread and belonging, These are the sacred acts of our time, friends. In a world often marked by exclusion, we get to be the ones who say, there is room, there is help, there is hope. There is an open door. Let's pray. Holy One, you go by many names, but your presence is always known, in love extended, in justice pursued, in the shelter of safe community. Thank you for the hands that have prepared beds, stirred pots, offered smiles. Thank you for the minds and hearts that do the hard work of justice, that fight for the poor, the vulnerable, and the ignored. Bless this gathering today. May it be filled with courage, imagination, and grace. May our shared work keep the doors open in the cold, to the weary, to the seeking, until none are turned away. In the name of Jesus and all the many names of God, I pray. Amen. Friends, Adrian Tirtanadi.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here with all of you. As Fred mentioned, I'm Adrian. I co-founded Open Door Legal about 12 years ago, and I'd love to share a little bit about my story, the work of Open Door Legal, the research that we worked on last year with some academics on our impact on homelessness, and just a little bit about what's going on with the budget. I'm just going to start with a little bit of my story. So here's me and my dad when I was a kid. And, well, there's no real easy way to say this, but I had a very kind of difficult childhood. I was really bullied. I had trouble making friends. I think I made my first friend in 10th grade. Big accomplishment. And I just felt so alienated from society. But God really used this to help me develop a critical perspective on our society, why were certain people excluded and other people included. And I remember around the 7th or 8th grade, we had like a World Book Encyclopedia, and I decided I'm just gonna read this whole thing because I have nothing else to do, right? And so I read the encyclopedia, and I learned about poverty in the US and in other countries, and I just felt this sense of outrage. And I go to my parents, and I'm like, why does poverty exist? What are we doing about it? Can we stop going on vacation and give the money to the poor? And they're like, why are you talking to us about this? And it ended up being a sort of, let's say 10-year-long conflict where I just became more and more radicalized, and eventually went to college and studied kind of systemic poverty. And I was really focused on this question of why does the U.S. have the developed world's highest poverty rate, right? And you might think it's because we're not spending enough money, but actually we spend a higher percentage of our GDP on social expenditures in Sweden and actually all other developed countries except for one. So it's actually not the money, it's what we're spending it on and how what social choices we're making. And eventually I did a lot of research and I did a lot of prayer, and I came to this conclusion that actually the key to addressing poverty in America was to ensure everybody could get legal help when they needed it. And I became totally convinced of this idea. I wrote up a business plan about how to build the country's first system for universal access to legal representation. And I used that as like my admissions essay to law school, and I moved across the country with my new wife. Here's after we drove across the Golden Gate Bridge and attended USF Law. I opened Open Door Legal 2 weeks after I got my license, January 7th, 2013, which was 3 years after I started going to City Church. And City Church was actually our very first funder. So the whole ministry or org would not exist without City Church. So here's me with my co-founder and my first development lead. We actually opened in the back of the Salvation Army in Bayview. They gave us the space for $50 a month, which is about what we could afford. Me and my co-founder worked on $15,000 a year, and we just put this sign on the street, get legal help, and with that sign and pretty much no other marketing, we were overwhelmed with requests for help. Overwhelmed. Every day, people would come in and with some horrible legal situation and say, I have been to 5 or more places trying to get help, and I've been unable to get help. And it was sort of incredible to realize that there's like 10,000 attorneys in San Francisco, and somehow I'm the only one available to ensure justice for these people. And I'm like a first-year attorney, you know? So, you know, I worked like 80-hour, 100-hour weeks. It's very difficult psychologically. You know, I spent 2 years, I think, without sleeping through the night. You know, did hundreds of cases. And we were just chronically sort of underfunded. You know, I would work on the floor, you know, I would work through the night, but we started to get a lot of traction, and after and basically eventually we were able to raise money, right, and sort of stabilize the org and actually start growing. So now we actually have 4 offices across San Francisco and a staff of over 50, half of whom are attorneys. So we've got an office in Bayview, Excelsior, Western Addition, and the Sunset. So let me give you like an example of one of our early cases, just so you kind of get a flavor of the kind of issues that would come in the door. So this was Claudia, and she had married her high school sweetheart in San Francisco, and about 2 years after they got married, the relationship turned very abusive. He would assault her about twice a week. She was even hospitalized once because of the abuse. The police were called once, but they never did anything. And they had 2 children. And then one day her husband calls the cops and says, my wife has hit me, which wasn't even true, but they come and they arrest her. She spends 5 nights in jail. The DA doesn't charge her because there's no evidence, but the police do kind of give her this restraining order that prevents her from going home. Her husband locks her in his bank account. This is a very common tactic for control. And so she can't go home, she can't see her children, she can't get any money, she can't even get a change of clothes. So she ends up homeless in San Francisco. She has a trial coming up on whether or not she'll be allowed back in her home. She goes to 10 agencies and law firms across the city and asks for help, and they all turn her away because they're either at overcapacity or it's not the kind of issue that they handle. And that's when she walks in the door to Open Door Legal. We did a 3-day trial. We got her back in the home, we got her husband out of the home, we got her sole custody of the children, we got her child support, and we got her a divorce, even though her husband tried to hide the community assets. This was all done for a cost to us, I want to say, of $3,000. And if you compare that to the cost to shelter, medical care, CPS, and all these other costs, you can see why it's so much more cost efficient. She was able to remain housed since then, re-enter the workforce, and even complete her citizenship. So really proud of her. So why was it so hard to get help? A lot of people don't understand this, but California is actually really, really bad for access to justice. There are an estimated 0.79 legal aid attorneys for every 10,000 eligible people. That comes out to only about 800 legal aid attorneys for the entire state, which has 40 million people in it. And according to the State Bar, roughly 2/3 of everyone who tries to get legal help will be turned away and will be unable to get help anywhere. Actually, the US is the only developed country in the world that doesn't guarantee legal counsel in civil matters. Things are so bad that every blue-colored country on this map is rated as having better access to civil justice than the United States. This means that countries like Nigeria, Egypt, China, all provide sort of better access to their poor to sort of use the civil justice system. Another matter, so this is Miss Pobre. She's a widow in Bayview. She bought her home in the mid-90s with her husband, who unexpectedly passed 6 months later. And this home was like essentially his gift to her. She has a disabled daughter. She worked a variety of jobs, including a cleaner and a bookkeeper, and for 25 years spent more than 60% of her income on the mortgage and principal of this home. And she actually saved up about $740,000 in equity. But when she fell on hard times, the bank did not try to work with her. They immediately moved to foreclose on the property. They didn't notify her of the foreclosure. They sold it for $50,000 and 1 penny, which was exactly 1 penny more than the outstanding principal. They sold it to an investment group, and the investment group moved to evict her from the premises, and that's when she found out about the sale. She also tried to get help, but you can't afford an attorney in a foreclosure incident if you can't pay your mortgage, right? That should be obvious. She went to a few places, and then her friend ended up referring her to Open Door Legal. We filed a wrongful foreclosure action. We ended up getting title back in her name. We got all the equity restored. We got the lien paid off. Then we had to fight with the city because the city wanted to triple her taxes because they claimed a taxable event had occurred. So we got that dismissed. And then we wrote a trust so she could pass down this $800,000 asset to her daughter. And actually, she went from, she told me she would have been homeless or probably dead if she hadn't got this assistance. Fun fact, according to the assessor recorder study done in about 10 years ago, 84% of foreclosures in San Francisco are done illegally. So Open Door Legal, we're trying to build what I like to call a general hospital for legal issues, a kind of place-based general practice that ensures everybody who can't afford an attorney in a specific community can access legal services when they need. We do over 35 areas of law, including conservatorships, probate, bankruptcy, breach of contract fraud, wage theft, adoptions, evictions, asylums, U visas, pretty much all of civil law. And in the 12 years since we opened, in Bayview, which was our first office, about 20% of the entire population has come to us for legal help. We have represented 5 to 10 families on every block. So here's our office, and every dot is a family we've represented. So this is just to demonstrate the scale of the unmet need. So because we don't have enough money to serve the whole city yet, we've decided to expand using a service area concept. And right now our service area encompasses Bayview, Visitation Valley, Trail Hill, Excelsior, OMI, Western Addition, Pack Heights, Richmond, and Sunset. and it does not include the kind of central neighborhoods like Tenderloin, Soma, Mission, Chinatown. But the goal is to finish expanding citywide and make San Francisco the first city in the country with universal access to justice. So, about our impact on homelessness. Last year, we collaborated with a few PhD economists to try and measure our impact on homelessness. We did a quasi-experimental study. This was likely the first academic study ever done on homelessness using San Francisco data sets. Well, first off, we want to say that maybe about 50% of homelessness is caused by an unaddressed legal issue, but that this has been kind of missed because of the survey design when evaluating the causes of homelessness. For example, in the UCSF study that was released last year on homelessness, about half of the case studies they mentioned under Pathways to Homelessness involved an unaddressed legal issue. But they never coded those as legal or access to justice issues. Instead, they got coded as sort of social or economic factors contributing to homelessness. In the study, we looked at what were the legal issues that caused homelessness, and this might surprise you, but it's only about a quarter eviction defense. So it's about 20% other housing law issues, and that includes like informal evictions, constructive evictions, habitability issues that would cause people to self-evict. It also includes a lot of kind of asset and income security issues, family law issues. I think it's easier to think about this in terms of like three mechanisms. So one is housing security, right? If your house is illegally taken away unexpectedly, that can cause you to become homeless. And this can happen through both the formal and informal eviction process. Second is income or asset security. If your wages or your assets are stolen unexpectedly, that can cause you to not be able to make rent and become homeless. And then sort of physical security, if you're at risk of violence and you can't get legal help, that could cause you to become homeless.
What's TRC?
So that's the Tenant Right to Counsel program. How does this intersect with the point in time count survey? Well, it's interesting. Obviously, mental health and drug issues are, kind of top of mind for a lot of people when thinking of the homeless population.
Can you explain the point in time count?
So the point in time count is the kind of every other year attempt by the city to measure the homeless population, and it comes with a survey to try and assess the demographics and sort of other information about the homeless population. So only about a third of homelessness is caused by alcohol and or drug and mental health issues. It's only about 14% eviction. Actually, family issues cause more homelessness than eviction, and then there's a lot of lost jobs and a lot of others. And again, this could hide a lot of legal issues because the lost jobs section could be wage theft, it could be wrongful termination, it could be discrimination, divorce, separation / argument with family, that could be domestic violence, and then other could be sort of income or asset security issues. Okay, so in this study we set up a control group and a treatment group. We matched them on the legal issues presented, we matched them on the demographics, and then the treatment group was given access to ODL services and the control group was not. And we then matched that data with the Homeless Management Information System that HSH manages to figure out who became homeless subsequent to reaching out to ODL. And what we found is if you kind of segment to the people at risk of homelessness who had a viable legal issue, the treatment group decreased their rate of homelessness by 13% and the control group increased it by 33%. So that is about a 46% difference, which means about every other person we represented in the segment was prevented from becoming or continuing to be homeless by our services. if you kind of map that out onto our rate of service, we prevented one person from becoming homeless every 2.4 days. And let me give you another story. This is Naj and Reggie. They lived for 45 years in Bayview. They grew up in their grandmother's house. They took care of their grandmother in their old age, and their grandmother passed because of COVID. What they didn't know is their aunt, right before their grandmother passed, rewrote the will to take title to the home. And at the funeral, they got served with a notice to vacate the home. It ended up being, this is like a classic case of probate fraud. We had to do like a lot of litigation to prove that they were the rightful owners of the home, and to prevent them from being kicked out. And they also said they would be homeless. And because they had prior experience with substance abuse, they said they would also likely have ended up on drugs and into a deep mental health crisis. So here's a quote from them. There's absolutely no question we would have ended up homeless and on the streets without their help. We felt extremely powerless. My aunt was calling us squatters, acting like we were vagabonds, when we have been living and caring with our grandmother for over 40 years. If we look at the cost efficiency of this, so this is the sort of cost of the service times the efficiency. So like how, we see that it costs about $7,400 using legal services to prevent one household from becoming homeless. And compared to financial assistance like ERAP or rental assistance, there's two studies done on that, and they both found that it costs about $50,000 to achieve the same effect, to prevent one household from becoming homeless. So it's about 6 times more cost efficient. And financial assistance is actually more cost efficient than shelter, which is about $60,000 per slot per year. Not to mention, a study in Santa Clara found that each homeless person costs the public health system $50,000 per year, and the police system $30,000 per year. And one reason is because the average client in the study of ODL got about $29,000 in financial benefits. So either canceled debt or assets. This could be things from recovering wages that were stolen, or canceling debt through a bankruptcy, or any number of matters. And this all means that homelessness, at least to the extent that we experience it in San Francisco and in California, is a symptom of our collective failure to provide access to justice. A huge proportion of people are becoming homeless simply because they cannot get legal help, because they are being taken advantage of and they are not able to enforce their rights. And that ensuring everybody can get legal representation is the most cost-effective way to reduce homelessness. So I have explained this to the mayor. I said, according to the study, if we could get another $4 million, we could finish scaling citywide, and we could cut homelessness 40% within 4 years. So instead of doing that, he proposed to eliminate most of our funding. So if we kind of look at, again, this topical breakdown, housing security, income security, physical security, I want to break that down by, how the city has funded these services in the past. So 26% of the issues that cause homelessness, that's funded by the Tenant Right to Counsel program here. And the city has allocated $17.7 million to that. And it's not even enough to serve everyone who needs it. We're only at about, let's say, 80%. Gender-based violence is about 14% of the legal issues that cause homelessness, and the city has allocated $1 million for the entire city for all survivors needing legal support. General civil, this used to be $4.2 million, and the mayor is proposing $0 for general civil. We estimate that these cuts, based off the study, will force 320 people into the streets every year and into the homeless response system. Thousands more will be impoverished because their wages will be stolen, their assets will be stolen, or they will be unable to cancel their debt. And, you know, it got me thinking about why would someone do this knowing the data, right, and knowing the stories? And as far as I can tell, it's because the relevant departments feel like it's just not their mandate. It's not what their core kind of responsibility is. And that got me thinking, well, what is the mandate of government, you know? And, you know, if we go all the way back to Iron Age Judea, before there were hospitals, before there were economic development agencies, before there were schools, there was, as Fred mentioned, the mandate to ensure justice for the poor and vulnerable. And that seems to have been forgotten by our mayor. So after a lot of prayer, I went to the Mercy Center in Burlingame, and I went on a 2-day silent retreat, and I read scripture, and I prayed, and I heard God telling me 2 things. One was that I should advocate against this, and 2 was that it was never meant to be a straight line. And so yesterday I started a hunger strike to protest the budget cuts to legal assistance for the poor. We had a rally at City Hall with 7 of the supervisors there to support me. We are calling on the mayor to reverse these cuts. At a minimum, he should be expanding funding for legal aid if he is serious about addressing homelessness. We've also had dozens of people from congregations across the city sign up to fast in solidarity with me and with everyone who is at risk of losing access to justice because of these cuts. So if you're interested in joining the fast, or you think your congregation would be interested, just contact me. I'm hoping to get a few hundred people to sign up, and then use that as to get media attention on how the religious community is so disappointed right now. And as for the mayor, here is the fast I would like from him: to loose the chains of injustice, untie the cords of the yoke, and to set the oppressed free. Thank you.
You know, we have some time. We have about 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, yeah. I know you have a voice that carries. Find your voice.
Adrian, you forgot to mention that we can all fast in our own ways. It doesn't have to be a total fast. We can do symbolic things, and we should let our congregations know. What you were saying about, informal evictions. When I saw that phrase in, I think, Mission Local, it's a reference. I also, in addition to our involvement in the Social Action Committee at Share Israel, I also counsel tenants with the Housing Rights Committee. So I see this stuff all the time, and I do work with the Coalition on Homelessness as well. As far as the TRC, the Right to Counsel Act, we did pass that. Thank you to everybody who hopefully voted for that. But anyway, so he has to fund that. That has to have some funding. But even what it has, they can't, I know, they can't do everything. And also, right, with the eviction, okay, they're funded, but they're not getting it about, and we all have to let our congregations know that the informal evictions, all of these stuff that your clients have experienced, they will be on the street. And I just want to
Thank you.
echo that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have questions. I just wanted to say, oh, I'm sorry, Fran. Hold on.
Is there any way to encourage a reallocation of funds so that perhaps the funds that we have available for homelessness are distributed in what you think and what we have all heard might be a little bit more equitable?
There's definitely a way, and the supervisors could do it, the mayor could do it. So I would, recommend you reach out to your supervisors, reach out to the mayor's office and encourage that.
Marcy.
Is Faith in Action Bay Area working with you on this, or is this sort of a separate process? Because I know they're coming up with a different funding model for homelessness, and I'm just wondering if it.
I haven't talked to them. I don't know anyone there, but if you could make an intro.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that, yeah.
Tessa.
Adrian, thank you for your work, for founding the organization, for your courage, for your actions on behalf of others in our city and throughout the region. As somebody whose parents ended up on the verge of homelessness and only because they had subsidized housing, I know personally my brother also died homeless in the East Bay. There's the intersection with elders in our community. I was involved in housing and tenants' rights years ago here. I think is lost on a lot of people, because to me what you're actually doing is ensuring, and I want to just ask you the numbers, that's the question, because to be appropriate here. In terms of the breakdown of ages or who you're serving, I think that would be also helpful for us in terms of being able to communicate with others in the community, including political officials.
Great question.
Yeah, it's about a third elderly or disabled.
Okay. 1, 2.
Thank you. It's so remarkable to witness your passion for justice and how practically you're doing it. I'm wondering throughout your service if you found peers with whom you could share that, because it's so wonderful. Yes, somebody you would be able to work with deeply with your faith and passion for justice.
I found a lot of great, I call them comrades, in the struggle, both at work and in my personal life, and my congregation at church has been a real blessing in this, actually.
Interesting question. We have Asian Law Caucus. Are they doing similar work to you?
Yeah, Asian Law Caucus is another great legal org. They are doing similar work, but the total volume that they can handle is like grossly insufficient to the demand. And there's a number of legal aid groups, but if there's no funding, like how are we supposed to help represent people?
We have to get on to our recognition of our shelter providers and meal providers. I just wanted to say in closing, we vet our speakers. And I made a couple of calls to City Hall, to both the Director of Homelessness and Supportive Housing and one of the 4 chief analysts, and both of them spoke very, very highly of Adrian and his grasp. And so I think that was an imprimatur that you should be proud of, and we are very grateful that you're here today.